Coming up, some serious showdowns in the West, and Luka Doncic leads his team over the Jazz. This is Locked On Now NBA.
The biggest games, the best performances, expert analysis. You are Locked On Now.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Now NBA, local experts on the biggest stories on the hardwood. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. Our Locked On NBA hosts are here ready to recap everything from Monday night in the NBA, but we're going to start in Dallas for Monday night's biggest game.
The biggest game.
There were some serious playoff implications in this matchup between the Jazz and Mavs as they sit at 4-5 in the West right now. Luka Doncic doing what he does. He's always the difference when he's out on the court. And Locked On Mavs has a full recap for us from Dallas.
The Dallas Mavericks get the win against the Utah Jazz. Nick Engstead from Locked On Mavericks podcast here, and the Dallas Mavericks get a big win over the Utah Jazz, who are just above them in the standings. This is a massive game for the West playoff seeding implications. Luka Doncic in this game was just incredible. 16 points in the first quarter. He leads the entire NBA in first quarter scoring, and you can see why. He just gets into his bag early, hitting from the mid-range all over the place. He had 35 in the game, 16 boards, 7 assists in total, 3 steals and a block for him. It wasn't just offense for Luka in this game. He was absolutely trying hard on the defensive end. You could tell when he puts the effort in, he can be a pretty good defender, and he really helped this Mavericks team get over the hump against this Utah Jazz team. But there's a lot of chippiness in this game. That's going to be the big story, is that there is so much stuff going back and forth between Luka and Rudy Gobert, tangled up, different things happening at halftime. Rudy Gobert tossed the ball back to Luka after a foul. Luka didn't like the words that were exchanged with him. Spencer Dinwiddie had to hold me back all the way back to the locker room. There is no love lost between basically just the Mavs and Rudy Gobert. There's no one else on the Mavs that seemed to, or no one else on the Jazz that seemed to have the Mavs fired up like Rudy Gobert does. But this will be a fascinating matchup if it goes into the first round. We will see and have more for you on the Locked On Mavs podcast.
The Jazz struggled on their 5th game of their road trip so far, and they came up just short to the Mavs in this game. Our Locked On Jazz host details what this may mean for Utah going forward.
Luka Doncic too much for the Utah Jazz as they fall in Dallas, unable to win the season series from the Mavericks in a 111-103 loss to Dallas. David Locke here of Locked On Jazz. The Jazz came into the Dallas playing the 5th game of a road trip and were unable to close out the Mavericks, who they've beaten twice already this year. Luka Doncic was the story as expected. He had 35 points, 16 rebounds, and 7 assists. And crazy as this sounds, not sure the Jazz defense was bad. He did not take a shot at the rim in the second half of the game. He went 5 of 8 on long twos. He got too many threes off late and only went to the free throw line for 7 free throws. He was just that good and that much in control. From the Jazz standpoint, their guard line struggled. Donovan Mitchell, 5 of 19, and Mike Conley, 1 of 7, as the Jazz were playing on a back end of a back on the 5th game of a road trip. And the Dallas Mavericks have now moved to within a half game of the Jazz for 4th place in the West. For more, go to Locked On Jazz on the Locked On Podcast Network.
Bonus basketball on Monday night in Detroit, and Atlanta simply could not get it done. Locked On Hawks breaks down a really tough loss for this team.
Hello, friends. My name is Brad Rowland, and the Atlanta Hawks go into Detroit and lose on this Monday evening by a final score of 113-110 in overtime. A brutal loss for the Hawks. Their first overtime game of the season, actually, for Atlanta. But back and forth, there was some drama in the final seconds. But the headliner for me in this game is the Hawks just not playing well enough offensively in the second half, defensively in the first half. Trae Young struggled in this game. The Hawks had all kinds of opportunities that they missed, and really, to go on the road, yes, it's always challenging in the NBA to go on the road, but to lose this game as solid favorites against the Pistons, who are rebuilding, and yes, they are playing better basketball recently, but the Hawks needed this win badly, and they didn't get it in this spot. So the Hawks did not play their best game. Was it their absolute worst game? No, but the Pistons went out and took it. The Hawks could not quite get enough of a response down the stretch, and that was the end of that. So we'll have full coverage of this game and much more on the Locked On Hawks podcast.
The Pistons rebuild continues. They got a statement win as they took down the Hawks in overtime and played some stellar defense on Trae Young throughout that time. Locked On Pistons once again singing Cade Cunningham's praises.
Look, man, screw the tank. host of the Lockdown Pistons podcast, Kuka Hill here. The Pistons are on a 3-game winning streak after beating the Atlanta Hawks tonight in overtime. One of the biggest things about tonight is that Trae Young was held to 5 of 20 shooting with only 14 points. The Pistons did an absolute great job of defending him. Marvin Bagley did a tremendous job on his switches, staying on his feet and not jumping, but screw all that, man. We know what we're here for. Cade Cunningham, man, listen, screw the tank. If you're going to win games like this because your rookie is looking like the best rookie in the draft and is looking like the clear-cut rookie of the year and is out there balling and looks like the best player on the floor, if you're winning enough like that, screw the tank, bro, because Cade Cunningham is him. Cade Cunningham had 28 points, 10 assists, 6 rebounds, turned up in overtime and in fourth quarter. Cade had some help from his teammates. Jeremy Grant had 23 points of 8 of 15 shooting, played really well off ball and off his teammates. Let Cade control the show, played really well. Marvin Bagley had 19 and 10 off the bench. Marvin Bagley looks like an incredible find. And Killian Hayes had an absolute tremendous game off the bench. 13 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds on 5 of 8 shooting. Just tremendous win, fun win. Let's go the Pistons.
The Chicago Bulls lost their 5th in a row last night when they fell to the Sixers, and they remain winless against the top 3 seeds in both the East and the West this season. So that's not a great precursor going into the postseason. Locked On Bulls tries to decipher what's going wrong.
What's going on, Bulls Nation? It's Hayes from Locked On Bulls. I'm here with your takeaway from tonight's game. And overall, tonight, the Bulls just didn't get it done. Even though they showed some flashes against the Philadelphia 76ers, really when it all boils down and comes down to it, the Bulls just did not have enough in the tank. They did not execute as well on defense as they needed to, especially down the stretch. Despite winning the rebounding battle big in the first half, the Bulls just did not have enough in the second half. Foul trouble across this game, even with the officiating, the Bulls, they didn't shoot the ball well from 3 over the course of the game. While Kobe White did get going late in the game, it just wasn't enough for this Bulls team to beat one of the best teams in the NBA in the Philadelphia 76ers, and they remain with no wins against Joel Embiid when he's playing with the 76ers over the course of his career. Unfortunately, it's not a good game from the Bulls. We look for them to rebound as they have their longest losing streak of the season now that it stands at 5 games. The Bulls have to look at themselves and ask some questions. How can they correct the ship heading into the playoffs? All these questions and more need to be answered as we look to the Bulls and see what they do outside of just waiting for Alex Caruso, Patrick Williams, and Lonzo Ball to return to help improve their defense. Bulls just didn't have enough today. That's it for me.
Coming up, Luka goes off and the Lakers struggle without LeBron. This is Locked On Now NBA. Today's edition of Locked On Now is brought to you by Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar available. They're low calorie, low carb, low fat, but high in protein. And some of their newest flavors include protein infused marshmallow. All of the bars have 100% real chocolate, so they're good for you and they taste great too. Come in tons of different flavors like that protein infused marshmallow. So there's something for everybody and you'll never really get sick of them because of that. So head over to built.com. You can use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off of your order. Just make sure you use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your order at built.com. Welcome back to Locked On Now NBA. I'm Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday. Karl-Anthony Towns putting up some impressive numbers last night in our best performance.
The best performance.
Hold up.
27 points, 13 boards for KAT in just 3 quarters of play as Minnesota completely demolished the depleted Trailblazers team. They took home their 5th straight win for Minnesota. So Locked On Timberwolves has more on this one-sided affair.
Ben Beacon with Locked On Wolves here. The Timberwolves beat the Portland Trailblazers by 43 on Monday night for their 5th consecutive win. They're now 6-1 since the All-Star break. The Timberwolves beat the Blazers for the second time in 3 days. Portland was just in Minnesota Saturday as well. And Karl-Anthony Towns dropped 27 and 13 in just 24 minutes in this game. He did not play a minute in the fourth quarter, only 24 total minutes for Cat. 27 and 13. The Wolves grabbed 19 offensive rebounds and defeated, frankly, what's left of the Portland Trailblazers with ease. No Anthony Simons. Simon scored 38 against the Wolves on Saturday. He sat this game out due to injury. It was kind of a who's who of fringe NBA players on the floor for Portland. Again, only scoring 81 points in the game. got off to just scoring 15 in the first quarter. Give the Wolves credit for being active defensively. The Timberwolves have played really hard on both ends of the floor. But really, this was more about who Portland didn't have available. At the same time, D'Angelo Russell sat out for the Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards sat out for the Timberwolves, both due to injury. Edwards missing his 4th straight game with the knee issue, and Russell sitting out with a quad contusion. But at any rate, beating any NBA team by 43 points is significant. And this is just the Wolves played hard. Karl-Anthony Towns was too dominant, too strong for the Blazers' depleted interior. And the Wolves won this one with ease. We're going to break it all down on the post-game podcast tonight. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Wolves for all things Timberwolves.
Let's go around the league.
Elsewhere in the NBA, the injury bug got to the Lakers once again. LeBron James had to sit out against the Spurs, and the Lakers weren't able to do much as they fell to San Antonio. And Locked On Lakers is going to give us the latest on that, but also an update on LeBron's health going forward.
This is Andy Kamenetsky, co-host of Locked On Lakers podcast, and the Lakers lose 117-110 to the Spurs in San Antonio. And stop me if you've heard this before, but the Lakers dealing with an injury, this time LeBron James, that problematic knee that has been giving him issues throughout the season. Frank Vogel expressed some hope before the game that LeBron could end up playing on Wednesday against Houston. And look, all things considered in this game, the Lakers played pretty well. They had 5 guys in double figures. They played very hard, very spirited, size issues without any real playable bigs or many guys above 6'8" eventually caught up to them. And in the meantime, they got practical issues too. They are now only a game up on New Orleans for that 10 seed, and they are only 3 games above the Blazers, who thankfully lost tonight as well, to stay in the play-in altogether. So not a good time for the Lakers at the moment. A lot more to get into, so make sure that you are subscribing to Locked On Lakers YouTube channel and that you're making Locked On Lakers your first listen wherever you get your podcasts.
The New York Knicks snapped a 7-game losing skid on Sunday, and they used that momentum to pick up their second win in as many days on Monday night against the Kings. Locked On Knicks recaps the turnaround after their win in Sacramento.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Gavin Shaw of the Locked On Knicks podcast following a 131-115 win for the New York Knicks over the Sacramento Kings. The Knicks were just horrific to start this game. They got down 49-29. About midway through the second quarter, it looked like a classic Knicks stinker. It looked like we were going to spend tonight recording a podcast about how Tom Thibodeau should get fired for the 350th time this season. And instead, Julius Randle just rained down holy fire in the second half. He finished 8 of 16 from 3, 18 of 31 from the field for a season-high 46 points. RJ Barrett was similarly ridiculous with 29. Emmanuel Quickley, after going through far and away, it's not even fair to call it a slump because it went on for about 3 months. But Emmanuel Quickley, after going through far and away the worst stretch of his career, has put together one of the best 6-game stretches of his career, and this was maybe the best performance yet. 27 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists for Quick, hyper efficient, banging threes, beating closeouts to hit floaters, and getting to the foul line, which is an area that has been just a significant struggle for him, where he really, really excelled a year ago. But quickly, probably the biggest development from this game. Randall, a close second. If he can start shooting like he did a year ago, this is a completely different Knicks team. Not that it will have any relevant impact on their playoff chances this season, because those are likely dashed. But going into next season and what the Knicks do with Randall in the offseason specifically, that could certainly change the equation. But for now, I'm Gavin Shaw, Locked On Knicks.
That's going to do it for this edition of Locked On Now NBA. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every single weekday. Make sure you check out Locked On NBA and, of course, your team's Locked On podcast. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Now.